My friend works for the city's CCTV archives and has seen some disturbing things. I hadn't seen Mike in a few months. He'd been buried in work and our usual weekend nights out had about disappeared. Then he called me on a Thursday and invited me over for drinks. I jumped at the invite, but took note of how depressed he sounded on the phone. By the time I got there, Mike had already started drinking and was slurring his words. A dark cloud seemed to hover over him, which got worse as we drank. I finally asked what had been going on with him. Mike turned darker. Afraid. He said it had to do with work. I never really knew what Mike did for a living. I did know he worked for the city in the tech department, and was involved with the CCTV surveillance network. But I never knew what his day-to-day operations were, which he began to describe in detail. Mike explained there were thousands of cameras scattered throughout the downtown core, outlying neighborhoods and well into the suburbs of our 1 million-plus city. His responsibility was to categorize and archive all the incoming footage. Most of the footage went into very general classifications and were saved in hard drive farms and identified with a lengthy combination of numbers and letters for categorical archiving. They were truly meant to be forgotten about. It was an expansive task, but Mike designed and built an AI screening program that detected common patterns in footage, then sectioned out anomalous behavior for review. The vast majority wasn't noteworthy. Something like 99.99%. Then there was the 0.01%. The car accidents, assaults, swarmings, rapes, abductions, murders. Those went into a special archive for use in criminal investigations. And then there was the 0.0001%. They were held in a classified archive and contained footage capturing events that for all accounts were unexplainable. This was called the Tartarus Archive. I looked up the word Tartarus after and discovered it was one of the darkest, deepest prisons from Greek mythology. It was said that if you dropped an anvil from heaven, it would take 7 days for it to reach the earth. It would take another 7 days for the anvil to reach Tartarus. It was the place you sent titans when there was nowhere else that could contain them. When Sisyphus was condemned to an eternity of futility and frustration with a large boulder and a mountain slope, that punishment was carried out in Tartarus. As it turned out, the name was quite fitting to the archive's growing contents. Comment and follow to be tagged in the next part.
When humans joined the greater galactic community, they quickly discovered that peace was upheld by a complex series of military alliances. Humanity wisely chose to stay out of it, until some human tourists run into the vacationing royal heirs, whose assassination would spark a galactic war. Luckily, the bomb was disarmed, and the assassins were distracted by other human tourists, as humans were a race they've not met in person, and their weapons were harmless. Chocolate? A gift? Helium? A joke. Trying to inject saliva into their consumption orifice? An intimacy. Needless to say, the assassins ended up sweeping up those tourists who willingly sacrificed themselves for the mission they didn't know the other three were on, and further galactic political debates led to additional laws about various actions, introducing retroactive changes that led to many civilizations mellowing out from their previously furious and on verge of bloodbath situations. It would be remiss to report that several additional incidents like this would happen to a popular human ambassador who would survive them all and even end up with the assassins as his bodyguards, though rumors from some human digital places imply he is building a harem, whatever that means. And those wouldn't be the only ones. Remember that one Martian colonialist cult? Humans resolved the matter in the same manner with another ambassador who swooned their emissary delegate and established a quirky deal with the cult, adding to Mars's unique situation as an off-worlder hub in Sol. Mars is also known as one of humanity's prime forge worlds, where large levitating superstructures or massive orbital megadocks can be found across the world. It can produce anything so long as the schematics and materials reach it. This industrial foci was a subject for sieging, until it was discovered that the gliding factory towers could double as intrasolar artillery platforms when they're not planet-side, and are able to knock ships out of translite with such precision that the ship's weapons and engines are disabled to the point that they can decelerate to a safe stop, only to then be seized by human law enforcement and sector security. usually involving massive, partially autonomous wedge-shaped ships capable of exposing a large dock section inside their frontal portion, where most seized craft are dismantled for analysis and their data cores remotely assessed for proof of crime. Crew seized in this manner have a 69% chance of voluntarily being integrated into human society and finding a human rather than going home or to some other galactic community location of choice. It may also be feasible that humanity is hiding its true potential by playing it safe in order to not compromise the Species Conservation Act by either acting on orcish or bardish impulses, according to the community. Earth isn't humans' place of origin, it's just a lost colony, ready for reintegration. What makes it interesting for the Emperor is the little board game humans there like to play called Warhammer 40,000, which contains alarmingly accurate data about the history of the galaxy and its future. The bridge chattered with noises of clicking cogitators and the binaric conversations of the tech priests. Servitors bound to consoles writhed in effort, monitoring the innumerable tasks in running a starship. Amid the riot of noise stood a solemn figure, a monument of calm amid the ocean of activity. He stood head and shoulders above all others, clad in golden plate. He gazed through the open viewport, eyes looking at a distant orb nearly swallowed by the darkness of space. Another immense figure walked up to him, not as tall or broad, yet still bigger than any other of the crew members. Stopping at the giant's side, the yellow and black armored warrior waited patiently, a hand resting on the carved pommel of a sword at his side. Moments passed before the giant spoke, his voice low and resonant, words precise and almost fatherly. "Report, First Captain. An odd planet, several billion in numbers, purely human strains, within genetic parameters of others in the Imperium." The shorter warrior rubbed his chin, eyes focused, yet carrying a hint of confusion. "Laughably pathetic in terms of technology. Atomics seem to be their greatest offensive yield, but they do not even have starships. Clearly, they do not have any STCs of note." The larger figure nodded gravely, eyes still focused on the almost non-visible blue dot. "Monitoring their communications, it is also apparent that they don't have a unified government. They squabble and fight each other worse than any world we have seen. If I may ask Lord Dorn, why are we here?" Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, looked down at the First Captain. His expression remained stoic, but a hint of disapproval entered his tone. "We are here because we were ordered to by the Emperor and the Siglite. That should be enough." First Captain Sigismund bowed his head in apology, but Dorn waved it away. "To be honest, I thought the same question myself. A backwards planet in every respect of the term would take so much time and effort to bring them up to Imperium standard, seems hardly worth it." Sigismund's confusion grew. "Then, why are we here?" Dorn stood silently for a few more moments. "Are you familiar with regicide, Sigismund?" "The game, sire? Yes, though I do not play. I rather spend my time sparring." A faint smile crossed Dorn's lips. "Indeed. Well, apparently there is a game played on that planet. It is quite similar to the Imperium and our way of life. Marines, the Eldar, even things that yet may come. The Siglite wants us to investigate. There are disturbing nuances that may dictate the future of the Crusade." Sigismund looked out with barely concealed skepticism. "So, is the group of humans all psycher active? They can tell the future? Through a game?" Dorn shook his head. "Unsure. The populace do not seem to be, yet if they can tell the future, then it is worth investigating." "Would it not have been more efficient to have the sons investigate given their talents?" Sigismund's features turned slightly dark. "I thought so too. Yet perhaps it is best to not tempt Magnus. The 13th would not come since this world is so much more backwards than any other in their 500. This place did not interest any others, so we were called." "Since when did interest matter to duty?" Dorn smiled wider and placed a fatherly hand on Sigismund's shoulder. It matters based on how well one follows orders. Enough. Let us get ready to investigate. Make the preparations first, Captain. Sigismund bowed and banged an armored fist against his chest, the sound of metal and resolve echoing throughout the bridge. He walked towards the doors, his heavy tread the sound of salvation or doom.
The humans were at war for the first time in 300-odd years, and I finally understood why they had avoided it for so long. My name is Graxol, a proud warrior of the Greerake Empire and designated military attaché to the Human Federation forces. My species has long been a part of the Galactic Alliance, lending our strength and combat prowess to keep the fragile peace. But even we feared crossing paths with humanity when the fires of war were stoked. Humans fight dirty, and they fight loud. I peered out from the open bay of the battered dropship, watching tracers from plasma cannons cut across the cloudless azure sky of Krivok 4. The colony world was supposed to be just another routine border dispute with the semi-hive-minded Kriyaith, something typically resolved through careful negotiation and the strategic relinquishing of fringe territories. But the humans refused to give up this rocky, humid planet, no matter how insignificant it seemed in the grand calculus of the galaxy. Crazy hairless apes, I muttered, my mandibles clacking in a rare display of agitation. The Xeno soldiers around me pretended not to hear my insult over the roar of the dropship's engines. We banked hard to avoid a volley of anti-air fire, the G-forces threatening to rip my spindly limbs from their sockets. This run should have been a straightforward deployment behind enemy lines. Get the human soldiers situated, give them whatever tactical support a Grok advisor could offer, and await the inevitable negotiated settlement once the Kriyaith realized they were in for a real scrap. But from the moment we lifted off from the human carrier in orbit, everything felt off. The entire dropship thundered with the cacophonous rattling of heavy munitions and enough firepower to raise a small city. And then there were the blood-curdling primal chants blaring over the intercom. Some ancient human music that sounded more like the guttural roars of vicious beasts than any art form I was familiar with. I braced myself against the bulkhead as a near miss from Kriyaith ground batteries rocked the dropship violently. "Sergeant," I shouted over the din, addressing the apparent leader of this band of ape-descended lunatics. "This craft is already far louder than anything I am used to, and I am certain that anyone in this star cluster can hear us coming. Must you continue your battle cry?" I eyed the offending intercom speaker with disdain. "The open doors do not enhance my confidence in this vehicle's ability to survive an anti-air barrage." The human sergeant, a grizzled veteran by the looks of his myriad scars and penetrating gaze, simply grinned around the thick cigar clenched between his teeth. Even after centuries of human presence among the stars, I could never get used to their morbid habit of inhaling carcinogenic smoke as if it were a delicacy.